Hi, my name is Mattia Murray, and welcome to The Longer Road. You are on the longer road if you have multiple intersectional identities that are often marginalized. You've had to work harder to get to the starting line, and you might feel behind. I'm here to provide hope, support, and practical tips, and to let you know that you're not alone. Welcome to my guest today, Rayna Jhaveri. She or they are an amazing, I'm going to say, I know you as a coach. That's partly how I know you online. You're also a fantastic musician and becoming this interesting visual artist, doing all this stuff lately. So I know you do a lot of things, and you're here today to talk about the note I had written down was awakening superpower shit for both of us. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself and then we will dive in.
Hi. Thank you for having me, Mattia. We've spoken before. We've enjoyed speaking with each other. I've never nailed down the elevator speech about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that I ever will not because I can't. I like the messiness of my multitudes. So yeah, I'm a person with many interests, many curiosities, many creative pursuits. I've been such, I think, my whole life, now that I look back. But along the way, it's been hard because the world wants us to define ourselves in a certain way. It is easy for people to identify you quickly if they have shortcuts, which typically tend to be professional and or gender and or culture and or other identity stereotypes. And I'm rebellious by nature and interested in self-concept and identity deeply and how those things can shift. So I'm a creative shapeshifter today, and we'll leave it at that. I'm really excited about the superpower awakening shit we can talk about.
Yay.
And I'm curious what questions you have and what thoughts you are processing, because I think we have very similar and simultaneous processes.
Yeah. So, first, I will ask you the question I like to start with just because I love it. And I think it will probably launch us in the direction we're going anyway, which is what are you passionate about right now?
I am currently quite absorbed with the painting that is coming out of me. I have looked back now and realized that I draw and paint and sketch and doodle and make art fairly habitually, but I hadn't really thought of myself as someone who did. So I have lots of thoughts about practice as well, because I had certain ideas of what it means to be an artist, who gets to claim that, what activities and behaviors and presentations are associated with being an artist. And of course, I picked ones that fit not who I was, but fit others I saw modeled in the world. And therefore, I didn't fit as an artist. But as I began expanding my understanding and acceptance of what it might be to be an artist, might I simply decide that I am one and the way I am exactly is sufficient? That's when I've been able to kind of have the little pieces ka-chunk, ka-chunk, ka-chunk into place and say, I get to allow it, I get to define it, I get to role model this particular way of being an artist in the world. And currently, the painting has been a piece of that expression. As I allowed myself to see myself in a certain way, it's almost spontaneous. It feels like a spontaneous explosion of this particular style of painting. I mean, I can trace the origins of it. There are many origin stories, of course, but the one for this particular stretch, it began with watching a documentary series called Painting with John, and it's about a painter named John Lurie. Have we talked about John Lurie? I don't know.
I don't think so.
John Lurie is a very interesting character, was an avant-garde jazz musician, before which was a like Hollywood off beat kind of film producer, I think, and director, got Lyme disease, disappeared to the Caribbean, and lives in on some mysterious, unnamed, unknowable island in the Caribbean now as a painter, and makes incredible, surreal, abstract watercolors with these fantastic creatures that come out of God knows where. And as he says, miserable trees and dying flowers, right? He's like the antithesis to Bob Ross's sunny disposition and all allowing personality. And I love John Lurie's personality. It's dark, it's edgy, it's mischievous, it's passionate, very deep, very wise. He's very angry about a lot of things because he loves so much. He loves art and the expression of art so much. So real nice and, anti-hero kind of character. And his art is incredible. His process is incredible. And it woke up something in me. And this is around the time I have been delving more and more into the subconscious mind, like very intentional explorations and understandings of the subconscious mind, realizing that I work deeply with the psyche at the subconscious level, simultaneous realizations that you are a big part of this, that I have autistic parts. I'm starting to recognize the shape of my own brain and the patterns and visual nature of my thinking, skip thinking, sideways and linear thought, very, very rapid synthesis of complex information and ideas, which is why I get bored of things quickly also. I have certain rigidity of routine and space. Transitions are very, very challenging for me. I like to be absorbed deeply into flow state. Right. So certain things I saw modeled in others that did not fit the mold of what Hollywood told me, such as yourself, have also been ways of allowing myself to explore aspects of myself that have since previously been buried or hidden or otherwise not allowed by my own subconscious. Right. So things kind of bubble up like from the subconscious into the conscious mind, like soda bubbles is how I think about it. And so the painting and the realization of the autistic parts has been a simultaneous superpower awakening. John Lurie was one such window because something about the images, the colors, the process of the painting spoke directly, non-verbally to a part of me. And I really had that experience I was very conscious of that experience. Something is speaking to me and it does not have words, but an understanding is being transmitted symbolically and visually to a part of me that I know exists, but I had this conscious experience of my subconscious. It's very strange to experience, to explain it. But one of my perpetual questions in life has also been, how do we become aware of that which we don't know that we don't know, right? And of course, there's no real answer to that, but it's like when we become aware of it is when we become aware of it. Until then, it has not risen to the surface as the soda bubble. So these simultaneous awakenings were happening. My interest in the psyche and subconscious mind was also rising. My work has been exponentially getting much more pointed. And I'm working with very, very, I tend to like to work with very advanced thinkers, people who can grasp things at the conceptual and metaphorical level, right? So I realize I'm not very good at teaching kindergarten. Like I'm great with kids, but I need to move at a certain level of complexity in order to keep me both excited and engaged at the same time and not burnt out. And then I started feeling the pull to my hand wanted to start touching paint again. I usually do Sharpies and color pencils because I can travel with them easily. And after seeing Lurie's work, I wanted to, I felt that draw. Like I kept literally my body, my physicality kept, I was fantasizing about painting. I was fantasizing about brushes. I was looking at colors. I was dreaming about the art store. Like I was paying attention to all the signs and resisting getting into acrylics, and the mess of it all was daunting to me. And then I found myself obsessively watching different kinds of drawing and painting videos on YouTube late at night as I was falling asleep. All I wanted to do was watch painting videos, very taken by the pouring arts style, where it's all kind of abstract and you pour paint, but there's a lot of waste in that. And the efficient part of me who also doesn't like to clean up. It's like, I don't want to do the drip paintings, but it's really pleasurable to watch that process. And in that course, I came across somebody's channel. And in the course of one particular something she was describing, she mentions the word neurographic art. And immediately some part of my brain, right? Because I have neuroscientist as my background as well. So my brain nerdery and my creative artistry, both sides were just like, zoop. What is that? We understood it right away. And we did, watched 2 more videos. We did a search. We watched a couple more videos and understood the process as much as we needed to. Like, that's how my brain understands things. I don't read anymore. I read the table of contents of an interesting book and then a couple of lines randomly selected inside, and then I back engineer the concepts. Because if they thought of it, so could I. And it might be different, but it'll be similar enough. And I'll have solved.
I love that and do that too. Yeah.
Do you do that too? I told someone that this morning. And she was like, oh, that is unusual. I was like, oh, I thought everybody did that. I didn't understand why people would bother reading the whole book when it's more fun to solve it with a couple of clues. And she's like, no, that is a different way of thinking.
Yeah.
So that's where neurographic art, it was very instinctive. It was very, right. And it's a process. It was developed relatively recently by a Russian psychologist, Pavel. His name is Piskarev. But it's an old style. I mean, people look at it and say, this is stuff I used to do as a kid. This is how I used to doodle when I was bored, right? So it's got a doodle component to it, but then it's got a lot of intentional kind of steps. Of course, I've dropped most of the steps and added my own, as per usual, kinking the model. And people are responding really strongly and positively and immediately when I've been just casually, I've shown some of the art. I just take pictures on my phone and, post them on the internet or show them to friends. And something about the colors too. I'm using radiant watercolors, and they're a very particular formulation that looks almost stained glass-like. So they have this vibrancy and transparency that's very pleasing to, I think, both the ADHD part of me and the autistic part of me. Responds really well to these very bright colors and the transparent vibrancy of them. And I think so do people. And there's thick lines and they look brain-like because you have to thicken the intersections. And it's very meditative for someone who cannot sit still, cannot meditate in the traditional way. Right? I have a lot of energy in my body. I've discovered also simultaneous discovery that I am synesthetic. That visual turns into audio clutter, like screaming. If there's visual clutter, I get, it translates to noise in my brain of different kinds. And audio signals turn into movement. So I have audio tacked into sensation and movement.
Ah, that's so interesting.
Isn't it so interesting?
Also the internal screaming specifically, I feel like I just can't get along with people who don't understand when I'm like, the internal screaming, the screaming inside your head. And anybody who's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm like, cool. Yeah, I know.
Do you have it does visual stimuli, do visual stimuli create the noise for you?
So I have experienced bursts of what I would describe as synesthesia at specific points, but they felt just more like an overall sort of big sensory experience where things were just kind of jumbled. But I also know that autistic people are more likely to be synesthetic. So there's more communication happening in the brain, just more things popping off at once, more of the brain is lit up at once, and like areas that wouldn't normally be involved are involved. So it's very common to have some amount of synesthetic experiences. And yours sound like very consistent. But yeah, I do have for me, it's less a one-to-one, visual to sound. It's more, which is, I think is technically what synesthesia is. It's like, okay, when this thing happens, this other thing is always triggered. And for me, it's more, there's a certain level of like sensory overwhelm my body will reach where then everything that feels off, including, using the wrong mug at the wrong time of day or like using the wrong spoon, right? Like I literally just hear screaming. It's just like screaming inside my brain. It's just my brain just being like, don't do it.
It's definitely worse when I'm tired.
Yeah.
When I'm overstimulated and
Yep.
tired, I will tend to snap more. I will tend to, right? The noise in my head then translates to some kind of irritation or, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Um, which is why protecting my daily energy is kind of my primary pursuit, and everything else comes as a consequence. Even my private practice is as such as a I've stopped thinking of myself as much anymore as a coach. Even I think my real gift is in facilitation. The thing I'm listening for
Mm-hmm.
in feedback I get from clients is that they really appreciate my ability to create and hold a certain kind of space where everything is allowed, nothing is judged. They feel very safe. It seems to be kind of a hypnotic, almost. It's not I'm not a hypnotist, but I have some kind of natural ability for conversational hypnosis of some kind. I don't know. This is part of the awakening of the superpower shit, right? I was like, I didn't realize, just like I thought everybody thinks like me. I was like, I thought everybody has the ability to have this effect in conversation. I met someone this morning who reminded me, she came running up to me. I was at my daughter's, they have like a school field day running around, marathon day, that's what it is. And one of the parents comes running over and said, "Oh, I met you years ago at a mutual friend's house at a birthday party, and you were talking to your daughter in your like home language from India. Like we have a specific mother tongue that's just between her and me." And this person said, I had been wanting to do the same with my kid, who at the time their child was 1 year old. And she said, I've been wanting to do this. She's also from India, speaks a different language than me as her mother tongue, but said I was feeling intimidated and that I was the only one. And you said something to me, and it wasn't the words, right? I said, I'm doing it. I just do it for 5 minutes a day. I don't beat up on myself if I can't find the word. It's just a few phrases, but it helps. It goes in, and she doesn't get from anywhere else. And something about not just what I said, but how I said it and the energy behind how I said it seemed to have impacted her so profoundly. She said, I started doing it from that day on, right? Her kid is in junior kindergarten or something now. Several years have passed. This parent never thought she'd see me again. She's like, I've been wanting to thank you ever since. And I'm now tracking and for looking for patterns of such stories, because I did not think twice about how I interacted with people, and I would go on my merry way. And I've had multiple incidents of people coming back and saying, that thing you said to me in those few seconds or few minutes way back when had such a profound impact. It changed my thinking, it changed my behavior, it changed my life in a way I could never have predicted. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And are we allowed to talk about it?
Yes. Okay. First of all, yes, we definitely allowed to talk about it. And also, I am certain there is a connection between what you were just describing about creating safety, creating a space where people feel safe, because that's where people have access not only to what you might be saying coming in from the outside, but to have that kind of ping off of their own inner wisdom and for that to land, right? Because that is
Mhm.
another, I hear the same thing from people. That's something, feedback I've been getting very consistently is, people being like, I usually am a people pleaser and I just don't feel that when I'm with you. I just don't have that urge. And I'm like, yeah, that's like very against my
Mhm.
whole vibe. But when people feel safe to be themselves, then if you say something, it's not necessarily, and this is just how conversational hypnosis works, it's not necessarily that you are forcing it to land on them, right? It's that they feel safe enough that they can open up, receive that. And when it lands, they're just like, oh, yes, like I've been looking for that. I've been waiting for this piece of information or permission to do what I already wanted to do.
Yeah. And that's, I think, why, because I used to think of myself, I mean, I worked my way into accepting the label of coach on, like putting the label of coach on myself was hard getting into it. And now I'm like, I've seen some people do coaching. I'm like, I don't do that, at least not that version of it. I don't tell people what to do,
Right.
but there's definitely a certain kind of visual imagery. I offer concepts in kind of a very metaphorical level at which the subconscious understands it and unpacks it, and the insight that happens from within the person, right? I simply offer the safety and the framing of an idea that they are free to take or not take. We set up a lot of that up front, right? None of this. They are ideas, suggested ideas, like here's a way to think about something or how to look at something.
Exactly.
Here is how I see it as you speak, right? Because their words create images in my mind, and I'm very attuned to those images. So I simply describe to them what I'm seeing. And what I'm noticing is that because we are in sync in some way, we have a mutual ability to sync up with each other. There's an attunement that happens. That's a bodily attunement. And I think an unconscious kind of attunement, like a nervous system attunement, even that I frequently, it feels like mind reading, but I'm like 2.5 seconds ahead, but exactly on the same path that they are. So I see a picture in my mind and I ask them a certain question about what they see, and I've already seen what they're about to say. So when they say it, there's very little surprise because it's delight, but it's their own. I don't even have to name the thing. They are naming the thing that I've just seen in my mind's eye, and we create a whole scene together, but they are creating it. And it's like being in a forest with a trekker, with a guide who is just a couple steps ahead. If I go too far, I can't guide them. If I'm right next to them, I'm seeing exactly what they're seeing. And if I'm right behind them, right, they're seeing it, they're having to experience it first. But if I'm ahead of them, but I don't say anything, I simply pause at certain points, or I may gesture in a certain direction. They see what they see, right? And it frequently is what I am already seeing, but they are allowed to have the delight and the potency of the discovery for themselves. And that is very lasting wisdom, because they have the experience of being able to do that for themselves.
And that is the part that I am the most interested in, I think, is helping. The word that comes to mind is midwife this experience for people, like help people birth these experiences for themselves. Because what you're describing and what I also do, some very similar overlapping stuff, and stuff that more and more the people who are experiencing it are describing what I do as magic, as being psychic, as being a shaman. People have been saying lately, because I keep having people encounter power animals while they're working with me. This stuff that's happening, it's very easy to just kind of, slap those labels on it and say, okay, this is what's happening. But really, the way that I see it and what you're describing is, at least the way that I'm looking at it, is that we are helping people have these powerful experiences themselves and know that they did it, not just so that they can go pay a psychic, which obviously people are welcome to do. You can go to someone who'll just say things and be like, this is true, right? That's one way of approaching this subconscious information. I'm much more interested in, hey, can I teach you how to sink into your body and get the information that you need so this can be a replicatable process for you? Not only because I want everyone to be able to do that and be able to get the information from their body and from their unconscious, but also because, to go back to an earlier point, I am not interested in solving the same problem over and over. Unfortunately, even with different people. It's kind of like this has happened to me in several areas of my life now. So, for example, I taught music for a very long time. And I basically got to the point where I was like, yeah, I can take someone from struggling to sing in tune to being performance ready in under a year. And that's great. But I'm bored. And as one of my teachers put it, you need the dopamine as the practitioner in order to be interested, be present, be really engaged, in order for the client to have the dopamine and be present and engaged and enjoying what's happening. And so, for example, I just got to the point where with teaching music, I was just like, I'm just not getting anything out of this. I've reached such a high level of mastery with teaching, and I can do it so easily that I'm just not getting anything out of it. And so I stopped doing that, for at least for now. And then the other thing that I'm noticing happening in my work with people is, once I've helped a few people solve the same problem, I'm just like, okay, great. Now I just want to like write a book or make a course, or like I want to do something so I don't have to keep doing this over and over. And I feel bad about that in a way because I'm like, okay, I I'm here to help people. I want to help people. But what's interesting to me now about, say, solving the same problem again is, can we do it faster? Can we do it easier? Can we do it conversationally? Can you figure it out by yourself in 20 minutes? Because, so again, I'm just always trying to make it interesting for myself. And one of the things that means is that the work I'm doing with people has compressed in time very significantly. So I can do with people in one session what used to take, multiple sessions, et cetera. And that's part of the kind of superpower side of it, is the mastery side of it. But the other side is just this, what feels magical, what people are people are coming in and just having these experiences and being like, well, shit, I didn't even know we could do that. I thought I was going to be here for a while.
Mm-hmm. The time compression, definitely. I'm there too. I think after this year, I have to compress my offers. Not compress. It doesn't even feel like compress. It's just streamlining. Like, we don't need 6 months. I had someone come into my 6-month package earlier this year. On day one, we had solved. I like thinking of it as like Sherlock Holmes case. I write up my case studies too as case studies. It's fun for me to pretend. And I have these like awesome androgynous button down floral shirts that I love wearing. And my friend made me a pipe out of an apple and a metal straw. And I have a picture of me with my feet up on a sofa, like an armchair, a very Sherlock Holmesy armchair in my floral androgynous shirt, smoking this apple pipe by the ocean. And I'm like, I'm here solving my cases. This is so fun. But yeah, this person came in, had a severe, like, inner critic relationship with the inner critic, very high performance person, right? Medical doctor, serious cyclist, like high achiever in all fields, but with a lot of internal anxiety and self-criticism, an amazing human being. And in one session, I do a creative version of IFS. I think I've gone kind of off the rails with IFS as well. I've already found 2 kinks in the model, uh, departures from the model that work actually a lot better, I think. So I may be teaching those kinks and those, like, so those are interesting things for me to think about. Like, I want to teach practitioners now, or at least offer alternative ways of thinking about frameworks and models and stuff like that. But yeah, and then with this client, like in one session, the inner critic became a fluttering piece of paper and never really has bothered her again. I had someone come in with OCD, lifetime OCD, 2 years plus of regular talk therapy, had not moved it. And the traditional, kind of the default approach in traditional therapy for such mental patterns and habits is exposure therapy. And the OCD was responding worse. Surprise, surprise. And I immediately understood, like, of course that makes sense. And by the 3rd session, 3 sessions, this shifted. She was confident at work. She was talking off the cuff, went to bed early the night before a big presentation, told her colleague not to worry, go to bed. We're going to chill. We're going to wing it. Like, this is not something this person ever said before, and spoke off the cuff for 3 hours. Like, has the relationship with the kids has changed, with the spouse has changed. And they're all making art now. They're all painting, including, the client, as well as now the kid is getting involved. And so it's like rapid compression of time, and it's dense.
Yeah. And it's from that safety, right? And I think, like, the more I've learned about the nervous system and the more I've healed my own and like worked with this with people, I have this theory right now. I think this is the first time I'm talking about this at all publicly, which is basically, okay, so you may know, if you have an ADHD brain, that your brain likes intensity, right? It's one of the things that we love and that we seek is intensity. And my current theory is basically the two kind of primary ways of making change, big, intense bursts of change, feel really good, especially for a neurodivergent brain. But the body, the rest of the body, I should say, because the brain's in the body, but I'm just going to say the body and the brain. The body is like, oh no, too big, not safe. It feels very uncomfortable. The other way of making change, which is those little 1% to 4% changes every day, feels great for the body. The body can do that. That's how we, work out a muscle or learn an instrument or do all these things. But the brain, especially a neurodivergent brain, is like, oh my God, I'm so fucking bored. I just want to die. Like,
Hence, my physical therapy has fallen off the rails.
exactly. And I've just kind of been presenting this to clients and just been like, if you're neurodivergent, there might not be a way of changing without feeling like shit in some way. You can't necessarily feel awesome in both your body and your brain. But what you're talking about, this like the subtle sort of working with the unconscious, getting the body on board, in my opinion, is in any way that you do it. There's a bajillion ways to do it, and people can totally do it themselves. Doing that, getting the body on board, lets you play with the brain stuff and actually, maybe have smaller change, maybe have bigger change. But either way, like the big change is going to feel uncomfortable to the body, to the unconscious, unless you're creating some safety for it. It needs that base of safety, or else it's going to be like, nope, too much, too big. I don't want to take up that much space, whatever the thing is. Like, this is not safe. But the brain craves it and is seeking more.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about very similar things where the safety that's created, there's like safety and excitement, right? It's the kind of the fine edge between the safety and the excitement. The way I've gotten good fast at music right now with my current band. Fast, I say, I mean, we've been together 3 years, but there was a 1.5 year pandemic in the middle. I don't practice when I'm not at rehearsal. And I used to think that was a problem because in my head, someone who was good at practicing practices every day for 30 to 45 minutes at minimum. All right. If you're professional, then like 6 to 8 hours a day. And I don't have that in me. That's that daily drudgery that I'm like, I just makes me would gag me with a spoon. So what I found that works for my brain and brains like mine and bodies like mine is a mix of a strong and loose structure. So we have once a week set day and time. So I don't have to micro decide every week when we're going to play, if we're going to play. It's a set day and time. It's in my calendar, but it's just once a week. But it's 3 to 4 hours of intense engagement, right? Where I almost have this positive dissociation from my conscious self and I'm in flow state, intense flow state. I frequently don't really remember intellectually what I played and what happened. We do a lot of improvisation, but it's an intense, right? The intensity of that focus and the creative expression. And then I can rest and recover for the rest of the week, right? Because I'm sore the next day. There's effects on the body. It takes me sometimes, it used to take me like 3 days to actually sleep, have a full night's sleep. After that, I would be so activated. When we first started, I've learned to regulate that now to some extent. But the intensity and then the space, and then the intensity and then the space, which is similar to the facilitation and coaching, which is why people describe the experience, at least in my world, as psychedelic. It's as if they have taken something, even though they don't, because it's this intense yet relaxed and open experience. And they frequently report having like really intense or crazy dreams in the following couple of nights.
Yeah.
Lots of energy, like their body will go from seated to standing while we're speaking and get into motion. So I check in about those things. There are bodily changes that happen during when there's energy released. They may have extended periods of energy, confidence, right? This one client I spoke about for the following couple of days, it literally behaves as if they've taken like MDMA or mushrooms. A couple of people described it as a mushroom trip, but in 45 minutes, and then they can go get groceries and pick up the kids from school. Like nobody's, right? It's not a 12-hour acid trip commitment. And then you're like sore for days. But there is soreness that can happen in the body. There's some exhaustion that is felt in the body. So very similar to a psychedelic trip without actually having to take anything. And this is where I've understood the divergent brain's ability to solve for patterns, right? I've taken way less psychedelic medicines or drugs than most people I know who have taken such things. Um, and yet I understood what they were doing. They were showing me the insides of my minds. Just like with the books, the way I read them, I was like, I need a couple of experiences and then I'm going to find my way back to those headspaces with as little as possible, right? I'm a big fan and advocate of cannabis. I don't know why it doesn't get counted as a psychedelic medicine just like the others, but I use it in a certain way. Very little is needed, but my brain fills in the rest. And if I can do that, so I'm part of the medicine in a sense,
Yeah, I
right?
love that.
Me and the cannabis together make like an acid trip when someone experiences us, like someone, especially with a normie brain or slightly divergent brain, they can come with. And if they've had psychedelic experiences in the past, then the brain remembers that and brings them back to that place. And so they have the experience of returning to that journey without having to take anything. It's simply opening up, it's the opening up of paths. The paths are now open. You can go back there.
Yeah. And that, like, that wraps together hypnosis, flow states, peak experiences, and potentially, drug induced states. One of the things those all have, two of the things those all have in common. One is they can zoom us out to view a very different, just view of everything and our life and our brain. Uh, from which a different type of change is possible than when we're very zoomed in myopically on the short term. So that's one thing. The other thing that it gives us is exactly what you said. It's like opening a door. And that's the way that I personally have experienced a lot of like hypnosis in particular, but like modalities where I'm working with the body. You might have a cathartic experience, or even just like if you have a really good cry, like it's something happening in the body, something processes through, and then suddenly 2 weeks later you look inside and you're like, oh, that door is just open now. Like I can just do this thing. I can walk through this thing that felt impossible before. And that is my absolute favorite thing to watch people do, is hear them describe something as literally impossible for them, and then 3 weeks later they're just like, oh yeah, I'm doing this thing now. And I'm just like, wait, what? Can we like notice what a big deal that is for you? You thought that was impossible, and now it's just a part of your daily life. It just feels normal, which I think is incredible. And I also wanted to say about the flow state thing, when you're rehearsing, that when we're in a flow state, first of all, we get like all the great brain chemicals at once that would be impossible to induce purely through drugs, because we would die if we took enough drugs to get all the brain chemicals we get in flow. So there's also, it feels
That's
awesome,
why
right?
I'm addicted to it.
Oh, and everybody who uses flow is addicted to it because it's fucking great. So it feels great, which is why we love it. But then also, when you're in flow, because of this heightened brain state, heightened attention, all these things going on, we learn we learn and perform 400 to 500% better, like 4 to 5 times better than we would in a normal state. So it's hilarious to me and awesome that you're approaching your band like it's an extreme sport, like a snowboarder. You're like out there, your body needs the rest, so you can't do it every day, right? But literally, people who do extreme sports, this is how they learn, because we get into flow states also when we're in danger. Literally, when people
Mhm.
are like falling off a cliff or something, it kicks on really hard. So anyway, I just love that you're treating your band like an extreme sport.
My band is an extreme sport. I have changed my life to accommodate the level of performance that I want to bring. People have described the experience as spiritual transformation, like total random people who happened to be there came up to us later. I mean, this has happened multiple times, that it is like an expanded state of consciousness, a psychedelic experience, again, an induced psychedelic experience, to the point I've noticed, and I now name it right up front. I'm like, we might go places and you are allowed to be in this as much as you want. And if anything feels big, dark, scary, you can step out of it. I point to the exits, I point to the edge of the circle, right? Um, and we also play fun music. Like, it's not all uh, heavy and hard, but a lot of it is. And I mean, that's what the physical therapy is for. I have to schedule professional massages after a show.
Yeah.
I'm also 45, right? My body, my body has been through a ton. I have not taken care of it. And of course, we now decide to embark on a, rock star career at middle age. There will be consequences. And so it is an extreme sport for this body and this brain for what it wants to do, right? My keytar is as big as I am, but sideways, right? So it's giant. I'm up on stage, I'm airborne frequently in these performances, and then on my knees, like bent backwards. And I did not used to warm up or prepare my body. And that's where my knees got shot.
Yeah.
So it is an extreme sport. So we play very few shows on purpose. We only take the ones that we really, really want. We understand that the people who come for these things, it is an extreme sport. That's a great way to describe it. But anything I engage in, I like the intensity, as you said. I like the extremity. I want the mastery, and I want the speed, and I want the space in between, because the intensity that I bring, that you also, I'm sure, do, it's not sustainable daily. You can't take acid daily. I mean, yes, microdosing, but I'm not interested in microdosing.
That's the vibe of this whole episode. I'm
This is
not interested in
This is macrodosing. This is the macrodosing episode, right? I can macrodose once a week on each thing, but now I can facilitate these psychedelic headspaces. I mean, I do it for corporates now, and it is incredible. I had a client tell me, this is the work of God you're doing. So yeah, at this point in time, returning people to their humanity and connectedness in a group setting, right? So I do these the corporate work I do tends to be in groups, small groups, 10 to 12 people. And recently, I mean, it was essentially an expanded state of consciousness that I facilitated these folks into. And I was part of it. For 2 days straight, I barely slept. I wasn't very hungry the entire time, right? I was full of energy, very, very focused. I made art until 3 a.m. Then the night in between the two full days, 8 to 10 hour long days these are. And these are people who had no idea really what to expect. They thought maybe there'd be slides and a laser pointer. And I'm like, no, we're going to the rooftop of this building. Nobody else, right, in the other groups was doing this. And they got so much out of it. And I've just got reports back, like they're taking these experiences to their teams, to their colleagues, even into their personal relationships. It took 48 hours. And their concern at the beginning, the client was like, you only have 2 days. What would you possibly do in 2 days? I was like, well,
oh my God,
let me tell you, 2 days is a long time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and being like both that and the, people watching your band play, when you're around other people who are in any of the following states, so mindfulness, just paying attention, being present. If you're around someone who's in flow, and if you're around someone who is in an expanded state of consciousness of any kind, again, just what the brain can do on its own, right, without any substances, which is incredible. And being around someone in any of those states or those mix of states causes you to have some of it too, if you're present and paying attention. So I can only imagine that I love the guide image that you had of like being a few steps ahead. That's how I feel as well with a lot of things. It's like, okay, I'm having this awesome experience, and if you want to hang out with me and tag along, like you can have some of it too, because like, I don't know if it's mirror neurons or something else happening, but right?
There's mirror neurons.
Certainly, I'm sure that's part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just like as a very random aside, this is also why babies love me. Like little kids are so drawn to me. And I think it's just because I'm very mindful and present. And I'm just like having a good time. I notice what they're noticing, and I am also enjoying it. And they respond rapidly and extremely to that because they're not used to adults paying attention to what they're paying attention to.
I love that you said mirror neurons too, because I was just thinking about, I mean, this can be understood from many different lenses, but from the neurobiology lens, I think of this as a self-leadership quality, where when you are in flow state, when you are mindful and present, or in this kind of more expansive state of mind, the neurons, the energy, if we think about it as kind of, I see like blitzy, lightning kind of things of energy coming out, but they are in an aligned kind of way, right? Where you become the barometer of the room. So the other systems, the other nervous systems, co-regulate using yours as the barometer, right? It is the most open, it is the most available, it is the most also calm, focused, and relaxed, because one can be open and available in an anxious state also, right? Anxiety and excitement can be very similar in the body, being on, right? So when there's the calmness and the relaxation as well as the focus and openness, I think the other systems attune to that, and that's at the subconscious level when they feel that they're in the presence of someone who's relaxed, who's genuine, who's honest, who's just like with them on it. I spend a lot of time up front. We talk about consent. We talk about the permission to dissent. They're allowed to disagree with me. They don't have to take anything I say as law or the word of, that's the end of it at all. And I said, we're going to explore the inside of your mind. So I don't know what it looks like, but I have experience as a trekker. So I'm good at following signs and seeing the footprints and, noticing smells and colors and touch and taste. And I will invite you to things, but it's the inside of I've never been there before, right? So we do this together.
Yeah. The other thing I just want to mention, because if people who are listening to this have experience with the traditional mental health industry, what you were describing before, when you are, not sleeping or sleeping less, very, very interested in what you're doing, just your nervous system is turned on, you're doing art, you're doing all the stuff, you're learning new things. That's how I incorrectly got a bipolar diagnosis back in the day. That was my first diagnosis. And I just want to mention that because so many neurodivergent people have, I just had this come across my feed again from a year ago, that like the DSM is primarily an insurance manual. The diagnoses help insurance companies, decide what to do. And again, not to say that, not to like, I am not a doctor, right? That's not what this is about. And I think knowing who you are and having a diagnosis that fits you is awesome. So anybody who identifies with that is great. But I also just want to say, both Rayna and I have had this exact experience of a brilliant and neurodivergent mind, an interest-based nervous system that loves intensity, seeks intensity, and can learn and do a lot very quickly, or like in a span of time, and then needs rest. And that's just how our systems work. So I just want to say that because I care so much about that, because I had that incorrect diagnosis for a decade and was taking medication for it the entire time. And again, love medication, love diagnoses. But for people who are brilliant and neurodivergent, we tend to gather incorrect diagnoses because of what it looks like.
Mm-hmm. And I will say, I would raise my hand first and say, I was looking for some way to understand myself. And I would go to my therapists with hypotheses, and bipolar was one of them. And I checked many of the boxes. And yet, thankfully, she was very open and not kind of a pathologizing sort of person. She said, is it problematic? I was like, no, I experienced this as waves of the ocean. Right? So what might be described as manic and depressive states, they do not feel manic nor depressive. They feel creative, and then they feel restful, right? And again, this is not to discount other manifestations of it, right? Maybe I don't have it at the level other people do. I've never had, psychosis level mania. So yeah, I mean, I wore that for a little bit. I tried it on like a jacket, but it didn't fit quite well. I was like, something is off about this. This just feels like my state. I know the rest state now. They have a flavor to them. I know the creative spurts, right? And they can be pretty intense. Like I am a marathon runner stamina now, both on the coaching front as well as creatively for art and music. I have a great deal of stamina, but it's come from years of being in that intensity and then coming back down, and being in the intensity and coming back down. But it's like the tides. It doesn't feel like I need a hospital bed. I just like to be by the ocean.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, exactly. And exactly, like is it a problem right? Or, is it hurting other areas of your life? In that case, obviously that's where professional help comes in. But that's true of everything, right? Not just the most stereotypical, manifestation or presentation of something that you've heard of. It's like, if you are experiencing pain and trouble and need help, I want you to be able to get that no matter what label is applied to it. And then if a label is being applied to you that, like you said, just doesn't fit or kind of isn't jiving with your actual experience, I still like, and you don't need help, and you're just like, well,
Yeah, it's been very liberating. I mean, and to come back to the theme of this conversation of like the superpower awakening shit, I think part of it is just having an understanding and an acceptance of what it is that this diverse brain can bring to the equation. But it has to have had understood itself as such, accepted itself as such, and really embraced itself as such, right? And it's all on, everything is to me at this point on a spectrum, right? There is no, there's no end point and start point. So this is not to make a, black and white dichotomy between the neurotypical brain and the neurodivergent brain. Like, we are just totally different. I can function in many ways in the default mode network. It takes a great deal of energy. It takes a lot of patience, and I need a lot of rest when I engage. So being able to build my life around my sensitivities and my needs and my divergences has been incredible. I live a very different rhythm of life than I think. I've forgotten how different it is. And then when I bump into kind of people with quote unquote normal lives, I'm like, oh, wow.
yeah,
People don't just go for walks on random Tuesday morning or go for dates on a Monday afternoon, or, right? It looks very different. And yes, there's lots of privilege baked in there. There's lots of trauma baked in there as well. And there's lots of courage and kind of very difficult decisions also. And I want to honor all of those
yeah.
things.
So I feel like energetically we're kind of coming to a close on this iteration of this conversation. I know that you and I could speak for literally endless hours. Like, we should probably just get an Airbnb sometime for 2 days and just like talk it all out. But yeah, I love your work. I love what you're doing, and I love that. Like, for example, I've seen multiple of our mutual friends post their own version of neurographic art and be like, "You're the one that inspired me," right? I've seen those posts going by too, which is amazing. So I know that not only the sort of formal work that you're doing, but just the way that you're expressing yourself, the way that you're putting things out there is helping other people just by nature of it existing and being in the world, which is very much what I aspire to as well. It's what the podcast is for. In theory, I hope it's doing that. And obviously we will be sharing any links that you want to like send people to. So, last few things, if there's anything else that you want to share or feel like we just touched on, but there's like something else juicy that you want to get to, we've got time. Where people can find you, and then any advice or message you have for yourself at a different age. I usually say younger, but for some reason I could see you giving yourself like future advice, whatever you want to do.
Ooh, I like the future advice thing. I am currently most active on Instagram, which is at the.punkmonk, Punkmonk. I occasionally send emails to a list. It's very sporadic, but there's links on my Instagram to that if people want. I may do, this idea has been bugging me for over a year now, but it's the idea of having a short, focused container called Sparketing, where I teach marketing. My version of marketing is one concept. It's only one concept, and the concept is free. The container is simply for group practicing together. That is all it is. Like, we get together, we do it together. We don't talk about it. We do. It's a doing, like 60 minutes a week, and that's it. Just like rehearsal for music. It's like an intense, contained practice of doing this one concept, and then we don't do anything in between. There's no homework, there's no extra modules, there's no workbooks, there's no bajillion things to choose from.
The ADHD
So
dream.
it's the dream, right? I'm like, I will give you relief from the overwhelm, is what I want to do with Sparketing for people who hate marketing. But I love marketing as Sparketing. Anyway, so it's a cool concept, and it's been eating at me, and I think I may execute on that, as well as possibly execute on the impulse to offer painting classes while the painting is still alive and well with me. So that would be kind of a community thing. The Sparketing would be like a business thing. And then I'm playing music a lot. So anyway, that's where you find me on Instagram. That's kind of what I think I'm going to be up to. We're in October 2022 as of this recording. So whatever I just said is applicable to the next few months. But then find me and I'll be up to something different if it's like half a year from now, if you're listening to this in the future. Which brings me to what I would tell my future self is like, just fuck it, keep creating. The more you fuck around, the more you will find out. So continue to fuck around.
Oh my God.
So that's it. I'm really glad we had this conversation. Thank you so much for having me on. I know you've had so much going on in your life.
Yeah. Thank you.
So hopefully this was a bit of a diversion of some sort.
It was. Yeah, I've been smiling a lot, which is nice. Love that. Yay. Thank you so much. And I know we will keep talking and being in each other's lives. And I love it. Oh, and you have a podcast as well. I want to make sure
I do. I haven't touched it in ages and the name may change. So
Great.
If I do it anymore, I don't know. I'm reducing all my things to like very few things, and it feels good to do less, but focused.
Love that. Now. Modeling that. Beautiful.
Yeah. All right. Well, It's been a pleasure as always.
Yay. Thank you so much. And I will talk to you all next week. Thanks for listening. If you know someone who would be helped by this podcast, please share it with them. And I'd love to hear your thoughts and suggestions at mattia@mattiamurray.com. That's MATTIA at MATTIAMAUREE.com. Thank you.